you better book a place in the Bitcoin arc, because the ocean's gonna keep floating up and then Bitcoin's gonna stay on top. There's only 21 million seats, so you better book your place, and a lot of those seats are already taken. When have you seen an opportunity to be part of an elite? There's gonna be less wholecoiners in the world than there are multimillionaires. If you account for all those lost coins for the whales, there's like 3 million, 4 million people that can realistically be wholecoiners. You're far ahead if you have a coin. So get to 0.21, get to a direct divisible of Bitcoin, and just climb your way up, because the more you have is going to be significant in the future. The market cap compared to global wealth is still small. There's still a lot to grow. I just have that instrument to now throw it in my Bitcoin stash that is going to allow me to retire early. There's no ex-Bitcoiners. Nobody that understands Bitcoin fully will reverse to a fiat way of thinking. It just doesn't exist. Just be forward looking, join the train, join the arc.
Get now the one Bitcoin before it's too late. You told me your history is where your family wealth got eroded in Colombia. Like right now, you are close to Miami, Florida, Fort Lauderdale. You said, if I remember correctly. How was that happening for you, and how did you then come to Miami?
Right. Yeah. So first of all, we have to go back. I would say 80 years, 80 to 100 years. My great grandpa owned a company of swimsuits, and it was one of the leaders in nationwide in Colombia, and they sponsored Miss Colombia, for those parades and stuff like that. So it was a very successful business, right? And then what happened was, they started having a lot of kids, right? And you know how that happens, it just mismanagement, stuff like that. But then when the war started everywhere in the world, right, where Colombia wasn't really a strong leader in economically, right? So those companies that had, let's say, amassed a solid foundation or pretty much wealth, just got decimated because of the currency, right? And a lot of people, since there were so many kids and stuff like that, the currency just collapsed, and it's not like an alarming rate like how it was in Germany, for example, right? But just the chaos around the world showed why a weak currency, is not the way to go, right? So a company that would operate in different cities around the country, participated in events, had a solid foundation that nobody would have thought that it wouldn't have lasted. It had to be sold, almost for nothing. And it's funny because the properties that were built as a result of that, because some money got put into some properties, and they built some buildings and stuff like that. Those buildings have kept their value quite well compared to the company, and it's a reflection of a little harder asset. But when you're operating based on a currency, and you have to pay wages, and all of a sudden the materials cost a lot more, it's something that just destroys companies in the long term. So it's how Seyr says all the time, there's not many companies that last 100 years, right? And my family's company is an example of that. And the reason why I came to America, pretty much when I understood the currency, the fiat currency that we had. And at that time, I wasn't really a Bitcoiner. I moved here in 2018. I had a few Bitcoin. I had a few exposure of Bitcoin, but I realized that I was in a disadvantage if I wanted to earn in Colombian peso compared to dollars, right? I remember when I was a kid, the PS4, the PS3, the PS2 would cost a certain amount of money, and then like all of a sudden 3-4 years later, I was like, oh wow, it almost doubled in price, but in dollars it stayed the same. So the Colombian peso is only 10-12 years lost half its purchasing power compared to the dollar, right? So that's what prompted me to move here mostly. Obviously, there's more opportunities for growth. I didn't live a bad life in Colombia. I didn't have the need, for example. But if I wanted to excel in life, I knew I had to have the foundation of a stronger currency. And at that time, I didn't realize how important Bitcoin was. But I saw to the dollar from the peso, what like people see on Bitcoin now from the dollar. So I think that's very important to like find like a better monetary instrument from what you have.
Absolutely, and it shows so good. I love your example of like you saw your amount of the PS4 in dollars and then in Colombian currency, and then it doubled in the Colombian currency. It's still the same price in dollars. You with that example, you got what inflation is, even though you probably didn't fully grasp of like what's going on there. I needed so long. I needed to get to Bitcoin to actually understand the financial fiat
Right.
system, which is a weird thing. But that's why people move their financial energy to Bitcoin, because they inherently know if they price things in Bitcoin, everything gets cheaper all the time.
Correct.
And that's how it naturally should be. It should not be naturally that much cheaper because Bitcoin has a major adoption rate, but it's the one reason why people first should move as close as possible to the money printer, or completely out of that system. So like if you want to be in the fiat system, be in the dollar system, the US dollar
Right.
system. But the best case is to be completely outside and be in the Bitcoin system. And I think your story actually shows us really good with like, you saw the inflation rate of your currency against the mother of all fiat currencies, the US dollar. And then you're like, I want to move as close to the money printer basically as possible, and now you kind of move to the Bitcoin land because you're like, oh,
Correct.
it's still a rigged system, so I have to move to
Exactly.
Bitcoin. Did
It
I
took
get
me
that
a
right?
step. Yeah. So and if you see the chart of BTC to COP, which is COP, Colombian peso, and BTC to dollar, because we always think of Bitcoin in a dollar price, right? $100,000 Bitcoin, right? But if you see just the last year, let's say from last year to today, the growth of Bitcoin on the Colombian peso has been 150%, right? And on the dollar, it's been 123%, right? So yeah, if you go to 1 year back, yeah, 150, right? But if you go back to BTC to USD, the growth is less, right? And that's just not, and then you can see the difference. Yeah, 135. Yeah, so it's a 15% difference. Just so the bus is running, or the train is moving faster. The Bitcoin train is moving faster for people that are not in the US dollar to acquire Bitcoin, right? So I understand your podcast is seen worldwide, and it's sad to see some friends in Colombia that still don't understand Bitcoin. I was just there last week, and a lot of them that I did all my efforts to explain, the sound money, the the importance of a sound monetary system where there's no true scarcity, right? Decimation, literally.
It's even
Yeah,
almost
yeah,
200% in the past year.
200%.
Like it's even worse than that. Like it's
Exactly,
massive.
exactly. So in these countries, people should be um, have the most urgency. They should have the most urgency than in other currencies to acquire Bitcoin as fast as possible, because it's pretty much a guaranteed return, because it's just losing so much value against Bitcoin. And I don't think you see that a lot in the podcast and online. Like they obviously mention Argentine peso, and the Turkish lira, and the Nigerian naira. So people mention these currencies, but they don't look at the actual difference, and it's significant, right? You could have bought 15% more Bitcoin, even if you're a Bitcoiner, if you earn in dollars, right? So it's super important to, if you're one of those countries, start allocating, because it's just going to be 10, 15 years, God knows.
How do you see Bitcoin currently? Do you see it as like a savings tool, a retirement fund, as like an investment, or is it already where you are like, I'm denominating my wealth in Bitcoin, and you're like, I want to be as much on Bitcoin, like 100% on Bitcoin, and I'm kind of, I'm almost struggling
Yeah,
now to pay fiat bills because like I'm have 100% in Bitcoin. I'm trying to figure out the whole thing now with
yeah.
capital gains tax and stuff like that. How do you see it?
Well, it's a funny mix for me because I became, I would say, a maximalist in not that long ago. I would say 2023, right? Um, and I started buying aggressively more when the ETFs got announced, right? Because for me that was a tipping point of, okay, now it's now it's not just a hedge against inflation, or it's not a savings tool. I always saw the value of Bitcoin, and I understood the scarcity mostly on 2023. But when the ETFs got approved, that prompted me to move. It was like the wake up call, like you don't have enough, and that was a tipping point. And so for me, Bitcoin, I know there's some people that are the purists of Bitcoin, and they hate the ETFs, and they don't think, BlackRock and all these other institutions should be purchasing Bitcoin. But I had some money locked in retirement accounts that allowed me to. I couldn't take them out. I couldn't buy Bitcoin with them even if I wanted to, right? Without triggering a taxable event or penalties. So I have self custody as well, because that's obviously the purest form of Bitcoin, where you want to have it. Um, no one can take it away from you. But if you have money locked in, these retirement accounts, and you have no idea how bad they were performing. I had like bonds and low growth ETFs and all that stuff that is just eating your wealth up, because it's still a fiat standard savings vehicle, right? So it wasn't even beating inflation in most cases. My best performing was S&P 500. So when the ETFs came out, I literally just transfer all that money into Bitcoin via the ETF, and it's been a good, super good investment. So it opened up new money to be invested in the ETFs. And the way I see Bitcoin now, and that's a great question, I see it as I will never touch my Bitcoin. I'll just keep adding to it. I dollar cost average as well, and then I see opportunities, I send more. I do have Strike, um, also, which is a great application. And through that, I've been thinking about doing the full Bitcoin standard feature that they have. I don't know if you know about it. And, that's Jack Mallers' app. So they pretty much deposit all your money there, and it gets transformed into Bitcoin right away. And then when you pay your bills, you can pay with your credit card, or you can pay your car payment with Bitcoin. So that's a good idea too. And at the end of the year, they just calculate the taxes for you, and you can do it yourself. And if you pay taxes, that means you made money. So I've been thinking of switching to that standard right now. I just aggressively save in Bitcoin, and I stopped investing in any other savings vehicle, S&P 500, all that stuff. I have a few allocation on other stocks. I own MicroStrategy, I own Tesla, I own some Magnificent Seven stocks as well, just because I had them prior, and I just kept them there. But right now, everything new that I do is Bitcoin.
Interesting. Yeah, it's like the strategy of moving actually everything to Bitcoin is quite aggressive, and I get that.
Yeah,
I made actually today or yesterday actually. So for the viewers that listen now, it's probably like 1 or 2 weeks behind, because I'm 1 or 2 weeks usually behind with publishing the episodes. I made a community question on my YouTube channel and asked like, do you have any altcoins besides Bitcoin? And 50% said yes. So I was surprised, because I have a Bitcoin only channel. So I only talk about Bitcoin. Like yes, the name Ethereum, Solana drops here and there up, but always in a negative
Right.
frame. So I never talk about those things. So being not only Bitcoin only in the crypto space, but also being Bitcoin only with like having no stocks, no fiat, that's really aggressive. And you are part of like a very select few people in the world. That's for sure. You're like a very, very select few of like the 0.1% of all Bitcoiners, kind of. I don't know what
Right.
actually the numbers are, but I think like that. And the strategy behind that is really easy. You get the most out of your Bitcoin because you hold it the longest possible time. Of course, you can also experience with like borrowing against Bitcoin and all those things. But if you don't want to participate in the credit system, that's the best way for you to do it because you have the longest possible time in Bitcoin and you only pay capital gains tax on money you made. So it's
Exactly.
anyways a profit for you. So like it's a no-brainer for me to do this strategy. And I'm thinking also to moving that strategy, even though I'm kind of having like more of an easy talk because some of my Bitcoin are actually tax free. So I don't have actually to pay taxes for some amount of my Bitcoin. But yeah, it's definitely an interesting strategy to be like Bitcoin focused on Bitcoin only in that regard. Are you having any plans to sell your stocks or you want to keep them for longer?
No, so I'm actually hoping the stocks I have get involved into. The ones I kept is because they could technically have some involvement with Bitcoin in the future. So Tesla has Bitcoin. MicroStrategy, we all know what MicroStrategy does, right? And it's actually in the last year has returned more than the Bitcoin I own. So MicroStrategy is always great. Nvidia, they can mine Bitcoin if they want for free, right? If you actually look at Nvidia, and I haven't heard this conversation a lot, but I was thinking about it. Nvidia could create one of the biggest Bitcoin farms, mining farms in the world. They know how to make the chips. They can make them the most efficient. And who knows? Who knows in the future if they start mining their own Bitcoin but they are in some way already involved with it because if you have those super processors and they're gonna be used eventually to mine Bitcoin, and so I think Nvidia and Bitcoin will collide at one point. So I still have Nvidia, but I can tell you it's a very low percentage of my allocation uh, as well. But it's because they're going to be related to Bitcoin, and I hope they do it because it's super smart. And if you see the market caps, uh, Nvidia is bigger than Bitcoin, which is funny. You know, you would never think that a company is bigger than the whole Bitcoin network, and that means we're still early. That means we're still early to Bitcoin as well. I also wanted to share with you another technique that I use with spending because I know a lot of people, mostly in these situations, Miami, New York, Los Angeles, London, uh, just high cost of living um, places, they struggle with spending a lot. So what I like doing, I call it the mirror technique. So let's say if I buy a $20, let's say I bought a charger. Let's say I bought this charger for my phone, $20, right? Automatically, I send $20 to Bitcoin as well, right? So everything I spend is like it cost me twice. So the way I see it is, if I'm buying something, I'm keeping myself from buying Bitcoin with that money. So it's gonna cost me a lot more. So I put in my head that everything I buy costs twice. So I send half the money to Bitcoin. So if I'm gonna buy a $200, or let's say I go eat outside and I get a $200 bill for food. I pay the $200 on food, but I send $200 to Bitcoin, and I don't feel bad like that, and it helps me save. So it keeps your spending regulated, and it keeps you also in some way a maximalist of Bitcoin because you're thinking, okay, if I spend here, I gotta send to Bitcoin too, and you gotta be. I don't know how many people that I came up with that for myself. I don't know if anybody else does it in the world. I'm sure they do. I'm sure there's someone out there, but it's been really good for me, and it helps you, like I said, keep your spending habits where they need to be. You don't go crazy. You still increase your Bitcoin allocation, and it works out. It works out. It's a good habit.
I love that. Yeah, like I see in the fiat world, people tell me like, oh, I have some interesting thing where like I save $1 for each transaction I do. Like I just like in a savings account, I'm like, like
Yeah. No, no, no.
do the same thing but with Bitcoin. That is a really good idea. And what you're basically doing is you're doubling the incentive for being more minimalistic and for being more more minded, more carefully minded for like where you save, where you spend your money, because every Bitcoiner already knows when you spend it, you're like, oh, I could have bought Bitcoin with that money. But if you then
Exactly.
kind of punishing yourself with like, I
Yeah.
spent $20 here, I also put additionally $20 away to directly to Bitcoin. That's a really good. I unfortunately can't do that because my money is already in Bitcoin. So
Right.
it would be an interesting strategy. Every time I buy something, I have to get 20%. If I buy 20 euros of something, I have to get 20 euros in debt to get more Bitcoin in a credit
Yeah.
system or something like that. That would be fun to do that. But yeah, it's also interesting. I just want to show, because people don't believe me that, and maybe they can see it now on the screen for those who also watch the podcast. For those who don't, I explain it. We basically have now a table where there's a rank 1 to, let's say, 10 assets of the world, the biggest ones, and gold is obviously number 1 by far. By the way, it's
Far.
like 5 times bigger than Apple, the number 1, the number two, and there is like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 individual companies. It's so crazy to say that out loud. 5 individual companies that are bigger than Bitcoin. It's Apple, Microsoft, Nvidia, Amazon, and Alphabet, so Google basically, that are
Right.
individually bigger than Bitcoin. It just blows my mind. Sorry, you wanted to
Yeah.
say something?
Yeah. Absolutely. So yeah, if you guys are looking at this chart, and it's a result of fiat, right? The money has to flow somewhere to keep the wealth, right? And for the past 20, 25 years, the best place to store that has been in technology stocks, right? So when you have a savings vehicle like Bitcoin, or a monetary network like Bitcoin, you don't need these assets. So it's slowly climbing up the ladder, right? Last year we were smaller than silver at one point, and I think that was a huge milestone, and people didn't really talk about it when Bitcoin flipped silver, and because silver was still considered, precious metal, still considered a precious metal, but it's going nowhere. So when you have these companies and they see Bitcoin just climbing, 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 and they're gonna have to adopt it. They're gonna have to adopt it at one point. Maybe it's 2% allocation, maybe it's 3%, maybe it's just their cash. These companies are sitting in so much cash. It's not even funny, and they send dividends out, and because they don't know what to do with the cash, because they know it sucks. They know it's melting. It's a melting piece of ice. And one analogy that I like to mention with Bitcoin when I'm explaining my friends or just any casual conversation is that Bitcoin is like an ark. If you want to compare it to religious events, right? So imagine Bitcoin is an ark of 21 million seats, right? And right now we're in a small sea level, right? And then all the rain is fiat money all around the world. Fiat money just flooding, right? And you better book a place in the Bitcoin arc, because the ocean is gonna keep flooding up, the fiat ocean, and then Bitcoin is gonna stay on top. And there's only 21 million seats, so you better book your place. And a lot of those seats are already taken. So in reality, there's, I don't even know how many, maybe 3, 4 million people can be wholecoiners, maybe less. And also, when have you seen an opportunity to be part of an elite, right? There's going to be less wholecoiners in the world than there are multimillionaires, right? At one point, the biggest The biggest elite right now is, or not the biggest, I would say the top of the top of elites are the billionaires, right? I think it's only like about 2,500 worldwide, something like that, right? But millionaires, there's so many millionaires with an M. There's so many in the world. There's more than Bitcoin. There's less Bitcoin for every millionaire in the world. So imagine people like, if you want to be part of an elite, get to one Bitcoin, because in a decade from now, 10, 15 years, it's going to be 3 million people out of 8 billion people that own a coin. So how is it not a good idea to belong to such a small percentage of the world's population, right? There's 58 million millionaires, right? Not even these millionaires could acquire one Bitcoin for each of them. And we already know the lost coins, Satoshi coins that are lost. We already know Saylor's not selling. Saylor's not selling. He's got 2% of the supply. We know the US government has some Bitcoin there, right? We got Mr. 100. Who knows who that is? Some people say it's the Saudi prince. We have no idea who that guy is, Mr. 100. So the whales and the lost coins, it gives us very little opportunity. And I don't think people understand how small of coins are actually left for the whole world. And we have to book the place in the ark, because that's our only way of getting ahead in this system, especially for our generation, younger guys like us that we didn't have the opportunity to buy housing for a few dollars. Like where I live right now, the cheapest apartment, 1-bedroom apartment, is $400,000 in downtown Fort Lauderdale. So it's 4 coins for like a 1-bedroom apartment, right? And you have HOA, and you have assessments, and then the elevator is going to get damaged. So real estate is a great savings vehicle too. I would say, yeah, just buy your house, stuff like that. And
Do you know?
hold on to. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I just interrupt. Do you know that meme of like boomers
Oh yeah,
selling their
yeah,
house? Like, and I really want to make that comparison now. Maybe I can
yeah.
show it. And I want to make a point here, because I think you raised a really good one here. This is the meme: boomers selling their homes for 2 million after buying them in 1969 for 7 raspberries.
It's true.
I love that. It's so
It's so funny.
wholesome, that video.
Yeah.
And the point that I wanted to make here is, the same thing will happen to all those OG Bitcoiners that have now a whole coin. Because if we go back to say how many millionaires are there, sorry to interrupt so long, how many millionaires are there? I have too many tabs going on. I hope I shared the right one. Yeah. 58 million millionaires are there. One millionaire can only have like half a Bitcoin, or like even less than half a Bitcoin, like 0.4 Bitcoin or something like that. And to put that in perspective, that's 1.5% of the global adult population. So if you have half a Bitcoin, if you have like 0.4 Bitcoin, you already are in the top 1%, 1.5% of the whole world. And probably you're
Correct.
already in the top 1%. So the question is, where are you if you have one whole Bitcoin? And then the other question is also like, what's the timeline for this? Because obviously, if you have now one Bitcoin, you are not in the top 1%, but in the future, you probably are. It depends on how long you have to wait for that also.
Right.
How do
Yeah.
you look at that?
Yeah. So the way I look at it is, right now is in what top percentile of the world I am when it comes to holdings, not necessarily in Bitcoin, sorry, in dollar or fiat terms, right? Because obviously $100,000 is not going to put you in the top 1%, right? But out of 8 billion people, or 7 or 8 billion people that are going to need or be exposed to Bitcoin at one point, plus companies, plus governments, right? Because this is just not you and other humans, right? It's going to be companies, it's going to be exchanges, it's going to be ETFs, it's going to be countries, it's going to be whole different things in the future that we don't know about that will run with Bitcoin. So having a coin, people need to understand the importance of being a coin. And I'd rather be on the boat than off the boat. Even if you're not a Bitcoiner, even if you don't believe in it, you think it's a scam, mathematically, why wouldn't you want to belong to such a small group of people that have that opportunity, right? It's an opportunity of a lifetime. And I didn't buy Bitcoin at $100 and $200. No, I bought Bitcoin when it was tens of thousands of dollars, right? And I keep buying every single day, and I don't look at the price. And I buy every time that like I said, I DCA, I do the mirror technique. And when I see an opportunity, if I have some extra cash, send it on to Bitcoin, right? So the percentage of holders compared to even compared to Bitcoiners, I think, how many Bitcoiners are there? 300 million people right now? Or is it up? Maybe 400 million of people that own Bitcoin. Even in that out of those 300 or 400 million people, you're not there. You're far ahead if you have a coin. Most of them own little bits of coin, right? So get to 0.21, get to a direct divisible of Bitcoin, 0.21, and just climb your way up, because the more you have is going to be significant in the future, right? Do you know how many dollars are printed every day?
Oh, no, and nobody knows, right?
Well, it says that it's estimated about 568 million a day.
I partnered up with Coin Vigilante. This is the most beautiful Bitcoin timepiece that I ever saw created by anyone. Look at that beauty. I love it so much. Coin Vigilante made a perfect Bitcoin watch. That's the perfect, subtle, elegant way to go out there and show that you are a Bitcoiner. And that watch brand is Bitcoin only. And Coin Vigilante just dropped a completely new and amazing Genesis edition of their watch collections. You have the date of the first ever mined Bitcoin block in there, and of course also the block height and which epoch we are currently in. I love the level of detail they put in this masterpiece, and make sure to check out those amazing Coin Vigilante timepieces down in the descriptions. I love those watches so much. If you watch or listen to my podcast on a regular basis, I guess you already bought some Bitcoin. And now the most important step is to keep the Bitcoin. Keep them secure in a hardware wallet. My personal recommendation for hardware wallet is the BitBox. It's super secure. It's simple to set up. It's also a perfect gift for a friend who has still their Bitcoin on an exchange. And you can get a 5% discount with the code Robin at the checkout. Visit bitbox.swiss/Robin to get your BitBox. And the next step is to really level up your sovereignty as an individual. You have to have the most secure self-custody setup. You have to secure your own devices. You have to protect your privacy. You have to set up an inheritance plan. And depending on where you live, you even want to have a plan B, a citizenship where you can move in case something goes really wrong. And through all those steps, the Bitcoin way is guiding you through step by step. And if you visit thebitcoinway.com/partners/Robin, you even get a 30-minute free call to find out how you can level up your sovereignty. Wow, yeah, like it's crazy how much how big that number actually is. It's crazy.
Exactly. So if we convert that to Bitcoin, how much is it? 568 million in Bitcoin. How many coins are there?
Oh, that's a big amount of coins.
Yeah, I'm gonna do it real quick.
I mean, it should be so it's 56 million.
568 million.
Yeah, exactly. It should be 560. Yeah, that's 560 million that are
dollars.
Oh, like
every day.
That never heard that number. That's crazy. And if we put
you wanna double check it in Google. That's what I think it is. Last time I checked.
And that if we divide that with like the 100,000, that's like what, 5,600 Bitcoin?
Sounds about right.
if I got the zeros correct.
Yeah, it's just hard to calculate how many zeros.
It's
I'm
like
sure Seyr will do it like this.
he always does those calculations. I also researched, by the way, in the meantime, the top 1% currently holds, on average, the top 1% of households currently holds around $14 million, which, by the way, is also I researched that once in Austria. It's also the same in Austria. So worldwide, also seems to be a good number, around 10 to 15 million that the top 1% has on average net worth. And then we go back of like that top 1% of the world will not be able to have a full Bitcoin. They have now 13.4 million in average net worth, but those families will not be able in the future to have every one of those a full Bitcoin. So those 30 million will be like 0.5 Bitcoin or something like that. It's like depends on where you put the number. So that in itself is like a 26 million price target for Bitcoin. If you just make that easy calculation, obviously you cannot make that calculation that easy, but that's seems to be directionally correct.
Yeah. So and that's assuming that everyone can have a fair share, right?
Yeah.
Which is impossible, right? So if you account for all those lost coins for the whales, there's like 3 million, 4 million people that can realistically be wholecoiners, right? Because some people just math, just can't do it. If these guys have Mr. 100, how many does Mr. 100 have? Buying 100 every day. I'm curious. How much does he have, right? Or do they have? Who knows if it's a group, if it's a company, and that's the crazy thing about Bitcoin. You just don't know who's buying, but it's there in your eyes. You can see all the activity on the chain, and you can see who is buying and who's selling. And if the U.S., everybody remember a couple of weeks ago, everybody had their eyes on that USA holding, because Biden wanted to sell the Bitcoin and everybody was watching the wallet, and we had a little panic. And so we just don't know how many people are buying, and how, like I said, 500 and I just checked, it's $541 million dollars that are printed every day. 13 million bills that equate to $541 million. So why would you want to have more of that day? What can we do? What can you and me do with a day of supply, right? We just never have to work again in our lives.
Buy some Bitcoin.
Yeah, we buy Bitcoin. Yeah, and it's $1 billion bucks a day. Sorry, every 2 days they create $1 billion, and they throw them in the economy. So the monetary debasement is a lot.
But what I just said is interesting, because like my natural thing is like, oh, let's buy Bitcoin with that. How long till central banks just like figure that out? I'm like, oh, we are screwed anyways. Let's buy in secret as many Bitcoin as we can. Yeah. By the way, I just looked it up. Mr. 100 apparently, according to BTC info charts, has around 56,000 Bitcoin in his wallet. So around 5.7 billion worth of value in US dollar.
That could be the banks, that could be the banks buying in secret. That could be Saudi Arabia, Aramco buying in secret. Because if you look at those economies, if you go to and see what they're doing, Saudi Arabia, the Arab Emirates, they're transitioning away from oil as their primary source, and that's why they invest so much in entertainment. If you see Formula One races, they're on it. If the golf tournament, the Live Golf, they did also Ronaldo. They signed Cristiano Ronaldo for their league. So they understand that their wealth and their capabilities to be that world global wealth leader when it comes to oil is not forever. So they're transitioning to doing all this stuff. And those guys are smart. I'm sure they're buying Bitcoin like crazy too. And they had the conference over there too, where Eric Trump touched the topic. And if you want to go in a little bit into the U.S. specifically with Trump, we now have a president that I don't know if he fully understands Bitcoin itself, but at least he's not a threat to Bitcoin. And his son Eric is the one who really understands. And they say that Barron, the younger kid, he also is a Bitcoiner. That's what they say, right? So if we get that strategic reserve, it's over. It's over. Bitcoin's gonna go up, but I know they're trying to push other cryptos and stuff like that. So we gotta see what happens. To me,
Interesting.
to me, Bitcoin is gonna reach regardless. It's gonna reach the heights regardless. But if the U.S. acquires $1 million, 1 million coins, it's a lot. It's a lot of the supply. If you see also states are now introducing laws. There was a map. I don't know. Have you seen that map where they have like every state with like the Bitcoin sign that has introduced legislation for their own reserve, like the U.S. states? So Texas is one of them. Oklahoma, I think, is another one where they are introducing laws and they might pass to do reserves, and people can donate Bitcoin to the reserve, and then eventually they're going to be able to buy, and then people can pay their taxes in Bitcoin. And they're introducing very creative legislation in the United States, and it's weird to not see like other parts of the world just waking up when their currencies are weaker, right? So the U.S. understands. Cynthia Lummis understands. She's really smart and she's close to the president. Michael Seyr is a friend. Eric Trump said it. He's been friends with Michael Seyr for over 10 years now. I'm sure you went to the party, with Michael Seyr. I'm sure he's the man of the hour. Everybody talks to Seyr. He was in Mar-a-Lago a few weeks ago. So it's very unlikely. I think now is more unlikely that nothing happens. I think there's going to be some sort of Bitcoin purchasing. But even if there isn't, there's going to be states, there's going to be more companies, there's going to be every day. Michael Seyr just bought $1 billion of Bitcoin on Monday, right? So the train is leaving, and you got to jump, And if you're in a different jurisdiction with more inflation, the train's moving like this, and it's too easy to buy Bitcoin nowadays. There's no excuse, to not just allocate anything to Bitcoin, or at least get informed. Would you think the world is getting more digital or less digital, right? Just ask anybody that question. If someone tells you it's getting less digital or less software based or less technological, people are lying, right? Everybody knows the world's getting more digital. There's always new things. There's drones, there's AI, there's technology that we've never seen before, right? So what makes you think that something that's literally the purest form of digital capital and digital monetary energy is not going to catch on in the future? It's funny how they're like, oh, all this is moving towards this place, but money is going backwards, right? So it just makes no sense with the direction of the human race, even if you see how technology is always what we strive to advance. So I think that's also a good point when it comes to Bitcoin and the future of Bitcoin.
It's also crazy what you just said, how fast the increase of the rate of the adoption currently is. When you look at 1 year ago, if you said the United States will buy Bitcoin in 1 year, you were absolutely crazy. You were laughed out of the room. It was like something that's like, yeah, maybe someday, or like, oh, you're a crazy person.
Yeah.
Now it's already reality, where the president is talking about it, senators are talking about it, states are talking about it, and it's like, it's just a question of time. Now it's crazy to think that nothing will happen, that they don't do anything with Bitcoin. That's not a crazy thought, and that's just 1 year. Like, where are we in 1 year? Where are we 2026? Like it's just the rate of how how fast the increase of that is, it's mind-boggling for me how fast that is really moving. If you're in there, like I think a lot of Bitcoiners are in the Twitter feeds and the podcasts and listening, and they're like so good informed that they kind of forget where we were a year or 2 years or 5 years ago, and how freaking fast we got. Like we are in the S curve adoption kicking off. We're in the exponential. People only see like yesterday.
Right.
People scream if the price goes down to 90,000. Say that to yourself like 2 years ago, and say like the Bitcoin price will crash down to 93,000. Do you like? I'll take that.
Yeah, take that
two
every
years,
day.
2 years ago, what was the price? Like 16,000, or like a very low number at some point in 2022. So that's it's just great. Sorry for my small rant, but it just
No,
shows
it's
the massive rate of adoption of Bitcoin.
absolutely is crazy. And yeah, people just don't talk about these like little things that are just math. Just the daily supply of Bitcoin. How many times is it bought every day? I know we still have reserves, right? But 450 Bitcoin every day, right? How many of that is getting bought just by only the ETFs and Sailor, right? They're buying weeks and months of supply in every day, right? Compared to all these whales, right? They're buying just weeks and weeks of new supply. So what happens when those reserves? Those reserves are also going to drain, right? And at one point, it's only going to be the new issuance that is going to be able to be bought. 28, we're going to get only 225 Bitcoin a day, right? So the halving is super significant, right? So I don't know if there's going to be cycles anymore, because people are like, oh, when the bear market hits, I don't know, with these rates of accelerated buying and all these people joining. I think the daily issuance of Bitcoin is already super low. Where are we right now in Bitcoin issued, right? It's going to be pretty much done. Pretty much all the Bitcoins are already mined. So the new inflation rate of Bitcoin, 450 a day, is nothing compared to what they're printing. How do we say, like 560 million, 540 million a day? How many they can buy that daily supply? Ridiculously, they can just buy like 20 times, 30 times, 40 times, whatever they want, they can buy, right? So why would you buy or work with something that is debased at that stratospheric level, right? Is Bitcoin is only 450. That's it. 450 is not a lot. Your people in your community can each buy a coin, and it's gone, right? So people just need to understand the math.
And it will be interesting, because I think it's not like that. We will hit like a point where we hit kind of supply shock, kind of an S-curve adoption event, however it looks, and from that point moving forward, we will just astronomically move up with the price, because there will there won't be enough sellers, and it will be like an extended period of time. I'm not talking about like an omega candle on one day. It will be
Right.
more of like a few weeks, maybe a few months, where I'm like, oh, like we shot up. Like in the past, we did it in 2013, 2017, in that time frames, where we just like shot up from $1 to $1,000. What was it, in a year, or like
Yeah, it was
in one and a
crazy.
half years? Like that's crazy, and that can happen again. Like it's not out of the ordinary, because there's so much interest now coming in, and I don't believe in diminishing returns at all, even for a second.
Yeah, the market cap compared to global wealth is still small. Like we showed earlier in the chart, there's still a lot to grow. Still a lot to grow. And yeah, you said it exactly right. And for the audience to understand, all these people, there's a stash of Bitcoin right here. There's a daily supply, but there's already a stash that these people buy from, right? So it doesn't affect the price that much, because these coins are already priced, right? People are just Michael Saylor here, here, here. They're not grabbing from that new supply, but this is getting smaller, right? The reserves of Bitcoin are smaller. So when I'm curious to see, to me that's a pivotal moment when the reserve just is just bought out. Now what? Now who's gonna sell the Bitcoin? Now who's gonna? There's gonna be a time where that's gonna happen. It's just a matter of how fast. And like you said, it could be over a week and shoot up. But when people just start, and that's gonna come on the news. You're gonna start seeing people like, oh, there's only the reserves of on exchanges are this much, right? We only have like 3 months left if we keep buying like that, right? So when that stash is gone, we're gonna see the real free market and the real fight for scarcity, for true scarcity, right? So we'll go. I wanna be there to see it for sure. I wanna be there to see it.
We should always we should get ready for that. Like we have I probably amp up my podcast from one per day to 2 per day or something like crazy like that.
Yeah.
Like just like a 12-hour stream of podcasts or something like
Wow.
that. Maybe we'll do that. One thing I want to get into with you before we come to the end, because we already like at 50 minutes. It's fascinating how quick we went here.
Right.
You are working in sales, and you want to kind of touch on the importance of sales and what are you doing there? I was in the past also a sales employee. I was not a big fan of it, but I like the art of sales, and the art of sales for me is basically the art of solving other people's problem, which is an amazing thing to do in the world. So, like, what is your take on sales, and what is kind of what you're doing?
Right. Yeah. So I am a sales manager for Honda. Okay, in Fort Lauderdale. Okay, and I think sales is a wonderful thing because it opens doors and it helps you. It creates good habits on you, and it creates a behavior that is focused on improving your life. Right. If we detach a little bit from like, oh, I want to sell you a product, a sales behavior, because I didn't go to university. I didn't want to go. Right. All my family, all my cousins, everybody went to university. I didn't want to go. I was like, I don't like this, right? Why would I be told what to do for 4 years? So I was always a little bit aligned to the Bitcoiner maybe mentality, but it wasn't because I was lazy and stuff. Like, no, I want to go. I want to move to a jurisdiction where the money is strong and I can make my own story, right? And that's why I came to America, and I joined sales. I started as a doing sales call over the phone to make appointments for customers to come buy cars at Volkswagen, right? So that created a sales behavior where I wanted more, wanted more, wanted more, and it was rewarded. So I was like, okay, my time. There was my colleague next to me, and I was like, okay, my time is 3 times more than his time, and we're the same job, right? And he has the same opportunities, he has the same leads, and I'm worth 3 times more just because of what I do with my time. So time is super important to me. So when it comes to sales, you can maximize your time, and when it comes to money and the results you get, right? Because growing, even if you graduate after 4 years, 5 years, and you get a job, and you're gonna need a promotion to earn more money, right? You're gonna need 2 or 3 years of a promotion to make more money. In sales, you see a guy, we have a salesman that makes 250,000 a year. We have another one that makes 60,000 a year, and they're the same hours. Now, thankfully, I manage the team, and I get paid. I get paid because of all of their performance, right? But yeah, like the behavior that gives you, and the desire to be more, to go for more, and to push, and to get up in the morning, and knowing that you need to sell something or to sell the car to make it happen. It's really cool. I like that, and obviously, providing a service, you're talking to people. There's not 2 days that are the same in a sales environment, so that's also cool. When you have people that hate their jobs, they're always miserable. It's because they're also just repetitive. They do the same thing every day, same thing every day, same thing every day. So there's not 2 days for us. Let me tell you that. So, and I just do that. I just have that instrument to now throw it in my Bitcoin stash that is going to allow me to retire early. I know for a fact it's going to allow me to retire early. I even opened a restaurant back home in Colombia, thanks thanks to Bitcoin, right? So it's our way. And even for older people, but I speak for you and me and our age group. It's our way to be those guys in the video dancing with the house bought for 8 raspberries, right? It's our only chance, our only opportunity to be, maybe some people make more money than others, but we don't have yachts sitting right there, right outside, right? We don't have we don't have a Picasso in our house holding all our wealth, right? We're living in places that you need to spend $5,000-6,000 just to breathe every month, and that's because of inflation. I saw the whole shift of inflation when we passed from Trump. When I first moved here to America, it was 2018, and we had a gas was $2, $1.98 for gas. At one point in 2022 or 2023, a gallon of gas was $5 here in America, something that you would never think of, right? So bad monetary policy, inflationary policy, where they just sprint to do all these things, is going to affect your life directly. And I wanted to touch that point too. The CPI inflation and the PPI inflation, they're scams because they choose what to show you, and they're like, oh yeah, look, this is the inflation rate. Okay, we're at 3%, we're good. No, you're not good. How much does your insurance go up? Here in Fort Lauderdale, it's a hurricane area, right? How much are the house insurance go up in the past couple of years? How much are the car insurance? I'm paying double for my car insurance now than 3 years ago. And that's not in CPI. So yeah, going back to sales, it's a behavior that I think helps me a lot. And if people don't have a career or they're thinking of doing a career move and you have the personality, you should definitely join sales because it's going to take you ahead. It's going to take you ahead and buy more Bitcoin with it. That's why.
That's amazing. I love that a lot. Really cool. I have one question to ask each and every one of my guests, and it kind of fits nicely with sales, but maybe you have something else.
Okay.
What can we learn from you besides Bitcoin?
I would say that's a great question. Just be forward looking. I'm always forward looking, but live in the present, right? I'm enjoying right now. I'm grateful. Be grateful. Understand what's going on, but be forward looking, right? Because if you're also stuck just in the wave of reality every day, you just don't know where to go. You're gonna have direction. So I think one of my strongest things in life has been my mentality and just be focused and be laser focused. And right now I'm laser focused on Bitcoin and and making it happen, right? Because I see what's coming. We see. I don't know if it's in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, but I know for a fact that you and me in 5 years, 10 years are going to be very happy, right? We're going to be very happy, and it's not too late. It's not too late because when I didn't understand Bitcoin, 2021, when I saw that spike, I really didn't fully understand Bitcoin, right? And I had some friends that were like, no, buy. And I bought some Bitcoin at the all-time high back then at $74,000. But I was like, come on. It dropped down to 20, 30. And I held through all that winter just because I didn't want to sell it. I was like, it might go back up to 100,000. And then I started really researching. And when I started looking at the deeper math of Bitcoin and how really rare it is, that's where you actually clicks for you and you get orange pilled. That's why they say there's not ex-Bitcoiners don't exist. There's just two type of people that are Bitcoiners and people that will be Bitcoiners, because there's no ex-Bitcoiners. Nobody that understands Bitcoin fully will reverse to a fiat way of thinking. It just doesn't exist, right? So that's my 2 cents. Just be forward looking, join the train, join the arc, book your place in the arc.
Really cool. I love that message. I 100% can subscribe to that. We have an entity in the podcast where the previous guest is asking a question for the next guest without knowing who the next guest actually is. And your question from the previous guest is, if Bitcoin's value is derived from time, what is the value of Bitcoin when we become immortal and our time becomes infinite?
Oh, wow. That's a big question. Time becomes infinite. I would say, just to make it easy, a coin will be looked like a major milestone, like unachievable milestone. Like they will use that. Let's not even put it in money. They will use that phrase, like how we call it. Oh, he's got $1 billion smile, or he's got $1 billion whatever. It's gonna be owning a coin is gonna be like this divine thing, where people are gonna refer to it like, oh wow, that's like having a whole coin, right? Like something happens in their life, and they're gonna say like, oh, that's like having a whole coin, or that's like winning. How people say, oh, that's like winning the lottery. People are gonna say, oh, that's like having a whole coin. That's just my perspective. It's just gonna be so high up that we cannot comprehend how much it's gonna be, but it's gonna be a term that people refer to as for the ultimate success or the ultimate uh, goal.
Interesting. I like that. It really shows and shines a light on that. It's like when we have infinite time, because right now it's for me it's like we have time and Bitcoin. That's the only two scarce things. But if time actually isn't that scarce anymore, which would be a crazy thing to imagine, then Bitcoin is the only thing that's actually valuable in the world.
Yeah.
That would be crazy. Crazy time to live. It's already a crazy time. What a time to be alive. Really cool,
Yeah.
Juan, for being on the show. Before I let you go, where can people find you, ask you questions, and reach out to you?
Absolutely. Yeah. How do I give my question for the next guest? Do I type it up or?
I'll just I usually do it after the show, but as
Okay.
you brought it up,
Okay.
let's do it now. Do you already have a
Okay.
question for the
I
next
do
guest?
not. But let me think.
No, you can give it to
um,
me offline also. Like I usually
all right.
try. I do it that way because I like to give the guest a little bit of a breathing room to think about a question, like for at least a few seconds, and not have it while they in the podcast wrap up.
Yeah.
To give them a little bit more time to think.
Yeah. I
Uh,
actually have it. I'm gonna
yeah,
give it to you
perfect.
right now.
Go
Just
ahead.
touching on the point that I made of a whole coiner. So the question would be, what does it mean to be a whole coiner to you, and what will it mean in 10 years from now? That's my question.
And what will it mean in 10, 10 years from now? I love
Yep.
that.
Yeah.
I type it directly up because I forget otherwise, and
Yeah.
then I have to see in the
It's
video
okay.
where it was and stuff like that. That's an amazing question. I think like whole coin already is such a prestige thing to be at, but in 10 years it will be just impossible to reach for most people. That's just a pure hard reality. Like get now the one Bitcoin before it's too late.
Exactly. Yeah. And congrats on your podcast. Thanks for having me. I know you went exponentially up like Bitcoin. You had a bull market in your channel, having Seyr up, and I really liked the Gary Cardone's podcast with you. That one was one of the best ones as well. So congrats on it. And it's funny because I played one of the clips of Seyr with you in one of the sales meetings that I had. I don't know if you remember when Seyr was talking about the cancer cure, and you had to be that sales behavior like that, and people, you could have their cure for cancer, and then they still won't buy it to you unless they slap you around and they call you an a-hole or whatever. That was a really good moment, and I used it for my sales meeting with the sales team a couple weeks ago. So I just want to share that with you. So that was a pretty good moment for
Oh,
sure.
amazing. Thank you so much for
Yeah.
sharing that with me. I love that. Yeah, like I think that clip should go to every salesperson basically. Like
Yeah.
it has nothing to do with Bitcoin. It's just about like how you should look at sales actually. And they're like, this was a small sales masterclass within a Bitcoin podcast. And it's great that
Right.
Michael Saylor gave that because he has a lot of knowledge and wisdom to give beyond Bitcoin. In Bitcoin, it's just so deep,
It's
his
crazy.
thinking, but like even beyond Bitcoin, like he was super rich before he discovered Bitcoin, and he got there in the fiat game without even understanding the monetary system. As he explained, he questioned the first time ever with Bitcoin, what is money? So like, it's really interesting to see how he got there and what his mindset was, and the skills and experience he acquired, because he was a billionaire before Bitcoin, and now he's just getting even richer with that and even wealthier with that. But yeah, we can learn a lot from him. Maybe because I will do a second round with Seyr, obviously. Maybe the next podcast will maybe be focused actually on that, what we can learn from Seyr outside of Bitcoin a little bit. I think it would be a really cool episode to get in there. But maybe also there's some interesting topic in Bitcoin. But yeah, thank you so much, Juan, for being on the show. It was really cool talking with you. And yeah, also thank you so much for everyone that is watching and listening, for joining us today. As always, I'll be back tomorrow with another episode. Bye-bye.
Right, it's always a pleasure. Thank you, Robin, and best of luck. And come to Fort Lauderdale, come to Miami. We'll go grab a coffee or something. Thank you.
Absolutely.